Hi everyone, Plant Anna Plant here to talk about our plant light shelf that we recently built at the end of September. At least I think it was the end of September. We built this plant light shelf because we wanted to have a way to basically keep our succulents and cacti and some of our tropical plants doing really well over the winter. We live in Canada and we happen to have a very harsh winter environment here. Not only does it get very cold, but there's a lot less daylight, and on top of that, the daylight that we do get tends to be a lot less intense. And because of this can mean that sometimes the succulents and cacti grow in really odd ways. So instead of staying nice and compact like a lot of succulents are, they tend to get really laggy. And this is why you'll see sometimes that instead of these succulents being very cute and very small, they tend to grow very long. And we decided that it would be the best way to help keep all of ours. Another thing too is that sometimes they lose their color intensity. So instead of having that bright pink or a very nice deep purple, it means that succulents and cacti can change to darker colors or more to a green as opposed to a rainbowy color. And that's completely fine, absolutely fine. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the plant at all. It's just we wanted to try to keep ours looking as good as we possibly could. So what we did was we did a lot of research, and the first place that I actually started was looking at the light bulbs and the type of lights that would be best for plants. Now, I listened to a Bloom and Grow radio podcast on plant lights, and I learned a lot of information from that podcast there. So thank you very much for having that podcast, and it made my drive to work a lot more enjoyable. I also did a lot of internet research too, because there are so many different types of lights that are out there, and I was curious to know why there are very different types. Now, different types of lights do different things for certain plants. And you'll find that there's certain ones that are really good for starting seedlings. There's other ones that are really good for helping plants to create flowers. And there's also ones too that are really good for helping plants to actually create fruits and vegetables if that's what you're trying to do with your plants. Now, what I really wanted to do with our succulents and cacti was basically mimic the summer sun. And the thing that I found out with that is that you want a wide spectrum light. So one thing that you will notice is that our lights are currently on right now, but you don't really see them that much because of the fact that it's daylight out there and these lights are mimicking daylight. So the light that we get from our lights is actually what's called a wide spectrum or a broad spectrum, meaning that it's actually every color in the rainbow. And our lights shine white, which I really appreciate. I'm not a huge fan of the purpley glow lights or lights that are blue or red or anything like that. And this combines all the colors, which is really good and also really helps our plants. So that's one of the common questions that I've had. Now, another common question that I keep getting asked is, where did we actually buy our lights? And again, I did a lot of research on that, and I found that you can buy them at a few different places, such as Amazon, which is great. But I actually bought mine from a hydroponics store in the city where I work, which made it very convenient because I went there after work one day and I bought the lights. We have 4 setups, so there's one under here, and then we've got 2 right there. And each one was approximately $30 Canadian. I can't remember the exact price. And the brand name of them is Sunblaster. And now I have no affiliation with Sunblaster at all, but they were the lights that I happened to find that would be best for what we have. So they're actually 2 feet long, so it's called 24-inch. And they are called wide spectrum, again, because they emit this white light, which is actually all colors of lights combined. And when we built our shelf, I really wanted to find something that would allow the light to go through the shelves as well. So even if, hypothetically, let's say this light is off, some of this light will go through to the bottom shelf, and I wanted to make sure that the light would move around the plants as much as possible. We bought this at Home Depot, and although it was very heavy to carry, I will say that I'm incredibly happy with it. There's a time-lapse video of how we put it together. And in the end, all we needed was the shelf that we got from Home Depot, the lights that we got from the hydroponics store, and then I bought extra connecting things because, as you will see when I turn the light switch off, it turns all of the lights off. And that's because all of our lights are connected together with just one switch to make it easier, because that means that we don't have to continually turn on 4 different lights. And the lights come with the connectors, and I have the original ones there, but I also bought extra long ones too, because the fact that the ones that they come with wouldn't connect from here to here just because of the distance that's there. Another common question I get asked too is, how long do I actually have them on for? And this is an interesting one because although we have a timer I actually tend not to use the timer because I'll be honest, I can't figure out how to get it to work. I'm having issues with that, and I definitely need to work those ones out, but it's a very complicated timer. But we typically turn it on whenever we're awake in the morning. Sometimes that means 7, sometimes 6:30, sometimes 8:30. And I have read that plants do prefer a more consistent schedule, but it just doesn't happen to work for us, and we're okay with that, and our plants are okay with that. And then when I turn them off at night, again, it ranges too. So sometimes it's 7, sometimes it's 9:30, sometimes I forget and it's midnight, and then the odd time they actually stay on all night. Our plants are fine. I do know that some plants may be a little bit more sensitive to that inconsistent light, but I also kind of am treating it as, let's say, a summer day or a fall day where sometimes there's clouds and they're not getting as much sun. Sometimes you have very cloudy periods for weeks on end and they're not getting as much sun. So although it would be better for our plants to have more of a consistent light schedule, I am okay with the fact that it is fairly inconsistent. It is, however, on every day for at least 8 hours. Sometimes it happens to be 10, 12, 14, but I do tend to aim for about 12 hours. So I usually aim for about 7 to 7 or 8 until 8. And then with the timer, I will say I'm incredibly disappointed with it. I ended up buying a Noma timer from Canadian Tire, and I bought the pricier one that they had there because it allows you to set various schedules for different days and a whole bunch of things like that. And although we set it when we were on vacation, unfortunately it would go on at midnight, which makes no sense to me, even though I set it for 7 a.m. and then it would turn off at 7 p.m. And again, I'm disappointed with the timer. I do need to figure some things out. The directions are very confusing. Jeg tried to look at it too, and he said it, but again, maybe our timer just happens to have a defect. I'm not entirely sure. Another important thing about our lights too is I wanted to make sure that they were lights that didn't take a lot of energy. And this to me was incredibly important for a few reasons. One, I don't want us using excessive energy because of the environment, and two, the cost of it as well. And it turns out that we're paying, I think, about 8 cents a day to have these lights on, which to me is completely fine because it means that it's going to save all of our plants, which is really good. Now, one thing that I do want to mention is because of the fact that when we water our cacti and succulents, we have to be very careful because, as you can see, the shelves go right through, meaning if any water spills outside of the plant, this means that there is a chance that the water could go onto the lights. And because of this, I have dishes under all of my plants, and some of the bigger ones I will take away to water. But another thing too is, you know those seed starter trays where they had like the black bottoms and they had the clear tops and you put everything in and they grow like that? I've actually used one of those clear ones here to house all of our littler succulents. And because of this, it means when I water, I just have to water directly into the dish, and I don't have to worry about the fact that any water is going to leak through and potentially harm the lights. Now, another good thing about these lights too is they actually don't emit heat. And I know sometimes people do want their lights to have heat because it creates a different environment for their plants, but ours don't do that. So the good thing about that is if I reach in and accidentally touch the light, I'm actually not going to burn myself. And I'm a bit of a klutz, so this can happen sometimes, so I'm very thankful that they're not hot. Now, another question that I've had too is, where do you actually put your light shelf? For us, because we live in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment, this was the only place we could actually put it, and it happens to be right against the window. And I'm really thankful that it is here because of the fact that it gets natural light too. But we do have a sheer curtain on that side because this helps to prevent some of the draft from the window from actually impacting the plants. And then at night we do close the curtains. So I do move the sheer curtain over, and I do put the curtains down as well because it also helps to prevent the plants from getting too cold at night. If you have any other questions, please feel free to ask me. I recommend that you ask me on Instagram just because it's a lot easier to respond there. But yeah, this is our plant shelf. I guess the only other thing to say is that I think it cost us about, oh goodness, $250 Canadian, I think, if I recall, which I was happy to spend that money because the fact that when I found pre-existing plant shelves with lights, they tend to be in the thousands of dollars range, and I'm very thankful that we were able to put this together ourselves. We were able to have it up and running within about an hour, which was absolutely amazing. Oh, and the only other thing I should mention is how we actually connected our lights to the light shelf. There are different ways of doing it. There's certain things where you can screw the base into whatever you're putting it into, but again, we're using wire shelves. And what we did there was we got those tie wraps from Home Depot, and there are little areas among the bottom, or sorry, the top, technically the top of the lights that then connect to the bottom of the shelf. So our lights are connected to the shelf, and if we want to take them away or move them, it just requires a pair of scissors to snip those off. It's also very strong and very sturdy. Yeah. And I guess my only big regret with this would be the fact that we didn't get a bigger shelf. Unfortunately, we can't actually build up onto it because the company doesn't really allow that to happen. And that means that potentially next year, if we have more plants, we're gonna have to get a bigger shelf, which I'm completely okay with. It's just, I wish originally we would have got the bigger shelf. Thank you for listening, and please feel free to ask me any other questions about our grow lights if you have them.